This is my favorite boba shop in Chinatown. This is me in my favorite boba shop in Chinatown. And this is all the boba shops in Chinatown. It's quite a lot, am I right? I'm gonna come back to that, but I'm Navaith Karthik, a 17-year-old dinosaur nerd and a student at Walter Payton College Prep. I've spent most of my life growing up in the Wild and South Side of Chicago, more specifically Douglas and Chinatown. Growing up, I've seen quite a bit of change in terms of Chicagoland Chinatown's development. In recent years, however, things have taken quite a turn for the worse. Not only had the pandemic caused quite the financial chaos for hundreds of small businesses, a larger and far more discrete issue began to grow. While I was usually used to seeing the bustling tourist side of Chinatown, the community itself seemed to be quite underrepresented. Just looking at the business diversity, well, there ain't too much of it. Chinatown's Chamber of Commerce has recently been tackling a big problem with the neighborhood: the growing issue of corporate enterprises and pop food businesses that have skyrocketed in the community. On the other hand, small businesses are only promoted further to form joint pop food and souvenir attractions, and the funding for communal events has been somewhat ignored. So, join me as we take a deep dive into Chinatown's growing financial crisis, and with the help of CBCAC and other community organizations, explore the social detriments ensued by business saturation, and the future plans to improve the business diversity and the community welfare of Chicagoland's Chinatown. Chapter 1: The Food Desert. Chinatown is a food desert, a niche food desert. The term food desert is used to describe locations and neighborhoods devoid of standard access to affordable and healthy food. Food deserts typically form in areas with low financial stability, lack of public transportation, and growing poverty. Fast food chains help pump money into the economy during times of distress, at the cost of social health. We'll explore these detriments later, but the main point is that Chinatown is arguably on the cusp of becoming one of these deserts. Key features of a food desert are absurd amounts of fast food chains in ratio to affordable grocery stores, easy access to junk and unhealthy food, and growing openings of fast food chains. After all, if more chains are springing up, the demand is increasing. While Chinatown does have a substantial quantity of grocery markets, the access and opportunity to fast food is hefty. Remember that map of boba chain stores in Chinatown? The number is bound to increase, with an expected 5 new stores opening by 2024. But what does this mean for the people of Chinatown? How does this change in the industry affect the daily lives of local store owners and residents? This brings us to Chapter 2: Business Diversity and Disease. A food desert acts as a web, affecting everyone within the community. The first section of detriments falls under a lack of business diversity. Business diversity is when a community sees a relatively equal ratio between all forms of commercial industry. Business diversity is a necessity for community success. Diversity ensures that the people have sources of healthy goods and foods, entertainment, with easy access, significantly improving health outcomes and demographics. One of the largest contributors to such diversity lies in the food industry. Places with high food diversity receive the best health outcomes, and the opposite is true for communities laden with business saturation, notably Chinatown. To test this, we can compare the rates of type 2 diagnosed diabetes across Illinois, specifically Chicago, and parallel it with the amount of fast food vendors compared with the nutritional goods across the city. Before we look at that, however, let's first grasp what type 2 diabetes is and why it's dangerous. Type 2 diabetes is a chronic condition that influences the process by which the body takes in glucose in the blood. The basis of this is the lack of insulin recognition. Insulin is a hormone that is produced by the pancreas and acts as a ligand to which its corresponding receptor, the insulin receptor, interacts with. These receptors are scattered across the cell membrane and serve to send a signal via a transduction pathway towards the expressions of genes that allow glucose to be accepted into the cell. Otherwise, the glucose you gain from boba or any other food remains in the blood. Type 2 diabetes occurs when insulin can no longer be recognized when it's binding to its receptor. As a result, glucose never enters the cell, and blood sugar skyrockets. This insulin resistance is primarily caused by obesity, stemming from a lack of nutritious foods, aka Chinatown, lack of exercise, or genetics. Now let's get back to the data. As we can see in this graph, made by the Illinois Department of Health, the district of Armour Square, aka Chinatown, sees around 14.4 to 16.9% of the population above 18 diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. 8% higher than neighboring areas, and around 10 to 16% higher than that of districts within downtown Chicago. Type 2 diabetes occurs commonly in populations that have increased access to sugar, and a lack of exercise activities and fitness welfare. Symptoms are significant, including blurred vision, high blood pressure, increased rates of heart failure, pancreatic cancer, and even death. Chinatown, being a hub of fast food, fits the factors that cause diabetes perfectly. These demographics become even scarier once we realize that the amount of fast food chains is steadily increasing in the shorthand future. We can therefore assume that by 2024, the rates of diabetes will escalate if action isn't taken to promote business diversity and other forms of industry within the neighborhood. To combat the loss of the grocery market, patches were filled with more unhealthy food restaurants. Compared to other northern neighborhoods, Chinatown sees a significant lack of such chain supermarkets now. This means that the access to nutritional food is crippling year by year, and can only be fixed if a small groceries or sustainable food stores open up. There is an organization, however, that is finding a solution to this issue. Chinatown's Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community aims at tackling this problem by redistributing business grants and helping stabilize small local businesses that can reshape the community's food industry. While the main factor causing corporate fast food chains to grow is the easy employment rate and cheap costs they promote, CBCAC fights this harshly. Recognizing the value Chinatown business has to the backbone of the neighborhood's economy, I've asked them a few questions on their plans on reducing the access to unhealthy food while increasing recreational and grocery businesses. In what ways does CBCAC aid small and rising businesses? CBCAC has always been supporting small businesses through outreach efforts and reciprocal partnerships in events and promotion. Are there any initiatives being made to improve nutritional health outcomes? For example, fairs, farmer markets, and public gardens. Recently, we got a fund from the city to manage a corridor ambassador program, which assigns personnel in Chinatown business areas to help guide tourists, promote Chinatown culture, and boost the economy after the pandemic. Are there any plans to introduce more recreational activities? And if so, how can people aid and join in the execution of such ideas/activities? In the case of recreational activities, we have cooperated with other orgs to hold summer fairs in Chinatown for the past years. The plan for this year hasn't been decided yet, but it will possibly be held around August. Alongside that, people can volunteer and aid to their choosing. With the aid of the CBCAC, there's a chance that the foreseeable future will have much better health outcomes in terms of recreation and consumption. Nutrition, however, is not the only problem attached to lack of business diversity. There is another and arguably more sinister issue occurring, and time is of the essence to help put a stop to this. This takes us to Chapter 3. Stress and competition. Let's take a look at the map of boba and street food stores again. Imagine being a small boba business trying to compete in such an overwhelming yet lucrative market. With such competition over the market, it's not just the issue of cheap food that's becoming a detriment to the neighborhood. Job stress, contracting, and financial competition has resulted in an increased rate of depression and poor mental health amongst families and businesses. The pandemic was at stake in this issue. The pandemic resulted in business dropping significantly. According to Mabel Moy, the chair of the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce, before it was 40% to 50% down. Now it's 80% down. Fast forward to today, and the business spots that had closed have been taken up by stores focused in the food industry. Local mom and pop shops that supported the community and small entrepreneuring families are having to fight against a cycle of competition against even more corporate/large-scale restaurants. To see the effect this has had on family business owners, I've gotten a documented interview from my friend's family, the owners of Tasty Place Bakery and Cafe, a very good store. I recommend going there. They run a family bakery in Chinatown, which has been contributing towards the community for 20 whole years. Like the street food and boba industry, Chinatown is under significant competition for baked goods. There's a total of 7 bakeries currently in Chinatown and more being furnished by the end of 2023. I interviewed Miss and Mr. Lee to see the viewpoints of small enterprise owners, and here's what they had to say. What difficulties has your business faced with market competition in Chinatown? There are less customers overall, and because of the economy, the price of everything, supplies, goods, etc., have all gone up. Alongside this, especially for new restaurants, is that business is really variable, especially since activity in Old Chinatown drops on the weekend. That's why our bakery closes on Sunday. There just isn't enough business. Do you believe there should be more variety in the street stores? Yes, there are already lots of new stores coming and replacing the old places. How well did the business survive after the recent pandemic? On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being business is failing and 5 meaning the business is doing amazing, it's probably a 2.5 or 3. The business is doing alright. Do you think Chinatown's plan to spend grants towards more bakeries, or should they focus on the ones that are currently in the neighborhood? They should spend more towards the older ones, since Chinatown consists a lot of older generations and newer restaurants, which older generations don't consistently go to on a daily basis, unlike family-owned bakeries that are frequently visited by the locals. Lastly, if there were 3 things you wish there would be more of, be it recreational entertainment or social activities or benefits within the neighborhood, what would they be? Fairs are really nice. They promote lots of tourism. Cultural event celebrations are great for encouraging activity, especially among the residents of Chinatown. And more healthcare services, especially for the children and elderly, as that would make Chinatown a more livable place, and make it more appealing to new residents. Additionally, farmers markets or open produce markets are very good, as those products are the most common goods purchased by Chinatown residents. Cooking has a very big place in Chinese culture, so having open markets to buy produce would encourage lots of community participation. While the views of other mom-and-pop shop owners may vary, this does help shed some light onto the competition and stresses of Chinatown. If kept untouched, these issues can fester, leading to increased rates of stress and disease that we explored before. But there is hope, and organizations such as CBCAC and small business owners who are vocally fighting for a better future. But that's not all. You can help too. By supporting organizations like CBCAC, you can donate or volunteer to help maintain local family-run businesses and get more insight on Chinatown's growing plans to tackle the issue of competition and growing food deserts. Alongside that, by dining at local restaurants and community resident-owned stores, you can ensure businesses like Miss and Mr. Lee's Tasty Place Bakery and Cafe thrive over facade corporate stores. Time is of the essence for tackling and stopping these issues, and there are still ways to ensure that the future of Chinatown's economic stability enhances for generations to come. I'd like to thank Clayton Xu, Annie Lau, and Grace Chan MicKibben from CBCAC and give some words about the organization. Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community is a non-profit organization that focuses on bolstering the community with resources and necessities for residents and businesses to thrive. They have planned and sustained the creation of hundreds of businesses, community gardens, learning centers, and recreational activities. The organization continues to fight for the economic and social reform within Chinatown, and you can support them at cbcacchicago.org. I'd also like to thank Osmand Lee, a true goat, and the Lee family for their hospitality in allowing me to interview them over their family-run business. They have been in the baking industry for 20 years and have helped the community countless amounts of times by providing homemade goods and social aid throughout the business's lifespan. You can find them and dine on 2339 South Wentworth Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, where they serve the best sweet, pork buns, and other Chinese dishes.